The year is 208 AD. In the heart of China, one man stands on the verge of total domination. His name is Cao Cao. He's conquered the north, and now he leads an army of 800,000 soldiers south, a human tsunami ready to swallow the entire land. Standing in his way are two small-time warlords, Liu Bei and Sun Quan. Outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and on the brink of annihilation, they have one last, desperate chance. A plan so insane, so audacious, it could either save them all or get them all killed. This is the story of how a handful of rebels defied an empire. This is the Battle of Red Cliffs. After unifying the north, Cao Cao's ambition knew no bounds. He sent a chilling letter to the southern warlord Sun Quan, boasting of his 800,000-man army and demanding surrender. Panic swept through Sun Quan's court. Most of his advisors urged him to bow to Cao Cao's might. It was suicide to fight. But then, a voice of dissent emerged. The brilliant strategist Zhou Yu argued that Cao Cao's army, though massive, had critical weaknesses. His soldiers were from the north, not accustomed to the southern climate or naval warfare. They were exhausted from the long march and plagued by disease. It was a gamble, but a winnable one. At the same time, the wandering warlord Liu Bei, having just suffered a crushing defeat at Cao Cao's hands, sent his own genius strategist, Zhuge Liang, to negotiate an alliance. Two rivals, pushed into a corner, agreed to join forces. The stage was set for a showdown on the mighty Yangtze River. As Cao Cao's massive fleet anchored at Red Cliffs, a sense of invincibility filled his camp. His ships stretched for miles, a floating city of war. He even had his engineers chain the ships together, bow to stern, to reduce seasickness for his northern troops who were terrible sailors. It was a clever solution, but it would soon become his fatal mistake. Meanwhile, the Allies were running desperately low on supplies. They needed arrows, hundreds of thousands of them, and had no way to make them in time. This is where the legend of Zhuge Liang truly begins. He promised his commander Zhou Yu he could procure 100,000 arrows in just 3 days. If he failed, the penalty was death. Zhou Yu agreed, secretly hoping his rival would fail. On the third night, under the cover of a thick fog, Zhuge Liang didn't lead a raid. Instead, he took 20 large boats, lined them with straw dummies, and sailed them right towards Cao Cao's camp. His men beat drums and shouted, simulating an attack. From the riverbank, Cao Cao's forces heard the noise, but couldn't see through the dense fog. Fearing an ambush, Cao Cao refused to send his boats out. Instead, he ordered his thousands of archers to rain arrows on the noisy boats to repel the attack. For hours, arrows thudded into the straw figures. As dawn approached and the fog began to lift, Zhuge Liang ordered his boats to turn around and head back. His men shouted, "Thank you, Prime Minister Cao, for the arrows." By the time they returned to camp, the boats were bristling with over 100,000 arrows, collected without a single casualty. Zhuge Liang had not only resupplied the army, but had also made a fool of Cao Cao. This incredible feat of psychological warfare was a huge morale boost for the Allies. But arrows alone wouldn't win the war. They needed a way to destroy Cao Cao's entire fleet in one decisive blow. This is where the story gets even crazier. If you're enjoying this piece of history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more epic tales. The Allied commanders, Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang, both knew what had to be done. The only way to defeat a chained-up fleet was with fire. But how could they get close enough to light the blaze? They needed a deception, something so convincing that Cao Cao would lower his guard completely. The plan fell to a veteran general named Huang Gai. He would pretend to defect to Cao Cao's side. To make the betrayal look real, Huang Gai publicly and violently disagreed with Zhou Yu's strategy. In a staged fit of rage, Zhou Yu ordered Huang Gai to be brutally flogged in front of the entire army. The beating was severe, leaving Huang Gai bloodied and humiliated. It was a painful, convincing performance. News of the public falling out quickly reached Cao Cao's camp as intended. Soon after, a secret letter from Huang Gai arrived. He wrote that he was furious, disgraced, and ready to switch his allegiance. He would bring his squadron of ships over to Cao Cao as a sign of his surrender. Cao Cao was a suspicious man, but the report of the public flogging seemed to confirm the story. He had spies in the Allied camp who verified the event. The defection of a senior general was a prize too good to pass up. He eagerly accepted Huang Gai's offer and told him when and where to bring his ships. The trap was set. All the Allies needed now was one final element, something completely out of their control: the wind. Fire attacks on the river were only possible if the wind was blowing in the right direction, from their side towards Cao Cao's fleet. At that time of year, the wind almost always blew from the northwest, which would blow the fire right back at them. They needed a southeasterly wind, a rare occurrence. Zhuge Liang, a master of not just strategy, but also astronomy and meteorology, built an altar and performed a grand ceremony, seemingly praying to the heavens to change the wind's direction. His own men thought he had lost his mind. But Zhuge Liang wasn't praying for magic. He had simply calculated that a brief change in weather patterns was due. He was staking everyone's lives on his forecast. On the appointed night, as Huang Gai prepared his surrender fleet, a miracle happened. The wind changed. A strong southeasterly gale began to blow across the Yangtze, straight towards Cao Cao's massive chained-together armada. It was the signal. Huang Gai's ships, which looked like grain transports, were actually filled with dry reeds, firewood, and flammable oil. They were floating bombs. He sailed his squadron towards Cao Cao's fleet, flying flags of surrender. Cao Cao's men, seeing the familiar flags and expecting a peaceful surrender, let them approach without alarm. When they were just within range, Huang Gai's men lit the fuses. The sailors abandoned ship into small lifeboats as the fire ships, now blazing infernos, accelerated with the wind and crashed directly into the heart of Cao Cao's fleet. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Because Cao Cao's ships were chained together, the fire spread uncontrollably from one vessel to the next. The river itself seemed to be on fire. Panic and chaos erupted. The sky turned bright orange, and the screams of burning men filled the night. The Allied forces, who had been waiting for this moment, launched their full-scale assault. Their main fleet charged forward, their soldiers boarding the burning ships, cutting down the disoriented and terrified northern troops. On land, Liu Bei's forces launched attacks on Cao Cao's shoreline camps, adding to the pandemonium. The northern soldiers, who couldn't swim, were trapped. They could either burn to death on the ships or drown in the cold river. There was no escape. Cao Cao's grand army, the largest ever assembled, was utterly annihilated in a single night. The dream of a unified China under his rule was shattered in a sea of fire and smoke. Cao Cao himself barely escaped with his life, fleeing with only a handful of loyal guards through treacherous, muddy roads, constantly harassed by ambushes set by Zhuge Liang, who had anticipated his every escape route. The Battle of Red Cliffs was over. It was one of the most decisive and lopsided victories in military history. This single battle completely changed the course of China. It stopped Cao Cao's southern expansion cold and secured the survival of Liu Bei and Sun Quan. It cemented the division of China into three rival states, ushering in the legendary Three Kingdoms period, an era of heroes, strategy, and epic conflict that would last for nearly a century. The story of Red Cliffs is a timeless lesson that even the most powerful giant can be brought down by strategy, courage, and a bit of calculated madness. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please consider subscribing